There are 5 things autistic adults think are normal in marriage but aren't. And I lived every single one of them without even realizing it for years.
And I lived on the other side of every single one of them, trying to figure out if something was wrong with our marriage or if I was the one missing something.
By the end of this video, you're going to recognize patterns in your own relationship that you didn't have language for before. And you're going to understand why they keep happening.
So if you've ever felt confused, dismissed, or just quietly lonely in a relationship with a neurodivergent partner, stay with us. This one's going to explain a lot.
And if you're new here, I'm Ryan. I'm on the autistic spectrum, and we talk about building stronger relationships. And this is my wife, Lori, and she has ADHD. We've had to learn this the hard way, and this is what actually helped us.
And I want to add one more thing here. Accepting your neurodivergent spouse doesn't mean trying to change who they are. Their brain just works differently. And when that creates friction, it usually means both of you have to work a little harder to understand each other, not that something is broken. Every marriage is about a healthy collaboration, compromise, and sometimes making intentional adjustments. Both in your team can grow as a couple, as well as become stronger individuals. We're not therapists or counselors, just sharing what actually worked for us.
And if your relationship feels unsafe or abusive, please reach out to a qualified professional for help.
They say silence is peaceful, the strong and silent type. Do you love the serenity of silence or crave the conversation? What happens when you need both?
For me, silence isn't a problem to fix. If something is wrong, I don't need to talk. And honestly, if something is wrong, I don't usually want to talk anyway, at least not right away. Being comfortable together without saying anything has always felt like a form of intimacy to me. Two people existing in the same room without feeling the pressure to perform conversation with each other, that's peaceful. That's actually one of the more content states that I can be in.
Which sounds lovely in theory. In practice, after 23 years, I still cannot tell the difference between Ryan is peacefully content and Ryan is just shut down. Those two things look almost identical from the outside, and the stakes for guessing wrong feel pretty high. Am I supposed to leave him alone right now, or does he need me to check in? There were long stretches where I genuinely couldn't tell you whether my husband enjoyed being around me at all, because the silence gave me nothing to go on either way. I took someone's neurotypical advice and decided to let him be. The claim is that if he had an issue, he'd say something. He didn't say anything. And I blissfully went along with life while he continued to either be content or the opposite. He may have also been festering in unspoken issues, which would later become resentment. Unfortunately, I chose to ignore the fact that he kept silent, which put more pressure and accountability on him. This ended up hurting both of us. Communication definitely matters.
And that's the part I didn't understand for a long time. To me, quiet meant safe. To Lori, quiet meant unreadable. And I think this is worth saying plainly. If your partner is autistic, their silence usually isn't a punishment. It isn't them getting back at you for something or withholding on purpose to make a point. I wasn't withholding anything. I just didn't know that my normal self needed a caption.
Right. And once I learned that his silence usually wasn't about me, it stopped feeling like rejection, but I still needed something. So now we've built in small check-ins. Nothing dramatic, just a, hey, I'm okay, just quiet every so often. So I'm not left doing detective work on my own marriage.
And if you're the quiet one in a relationship, you don't have to become chatty to fix this. You just have to occasionally tell your partner what kind of quiet it is. That one sentence does more work than people think.
And if it's the uncomfortable type of silence, the kind that you are holding in because you don't know what to say, find a way to say it. And you'd be surprised how much more healthy it is.
Before we go further, if that first one hit close to home and you're constantly trying to interpret what your partner's silence or their words actually mean, we built something for exactly that. It's called What I Mean versus What You Hear, a free translation guide for couples, and it's built for exactly this kind of gap between what one partner intends and what the other partner actually receives.
I would have printed this out and taped it on the fridge 15 years ago if it had existed.
You'll find a link in the description below. The second one is a belief I held onto for most of our marriage, and it quietly starved my wife of something she really needed. My logic went something like this. I married her, I'm still there. Obviously, I love her. Why would I need to say it or show it emotionally every day? I'd seen enough movies to know what grand gestures were supposed to look like and that they're supposed to be romantic. So every so often, I do something big, hyper focus on her for a while, plan something elaborate, and in my head, that's covered us. That gesture was supposed to carry the relationship forward for us generously for the better part of a year.
Meanwhile, I'm over here thinking, I never hear it. I don't feel generally chosen or even like he's a friend. For some stretches, honestly, the relationship felt empty, wondering how the dream of companionship slipped into just existing for him. It's not that I doubted his commitment, it's that love for me needs to be said and shown regularly, or it starts to feel like something I'm assuming rather than something I know.
The problem was I treated love like a bank account you deposit into once and let it sit. Laura needed to be treated like a bill you pay regularly. And honestly, once I understood that, it made a whole lot more sense to me. Consistent, small, and expected. Not one dramatic deposit and then silence for months.
And it's genuinely that simple of a fix once it was understood. I'm not asking for a grand gesture. I'm asking for the little ones often, and maybe a grand gesture once in a while, because intentional time together is also important. You can hear about that in one of our other videos.
So if you're someone who thinks the big declaration you made once should still be echoing for your partner, it isn't. Say it small and say it often. It costs you nothing and it changes everything for the person hearing it.
This one is the reasons that our Saturdays used to be a battleground of Ryan versus the family, and I mean that almost literally.
Predictability feels like safety to me. Systems, schedules, routines, they're not restrictions. They're the thing that keeps my nervous system calm. So I'd have a system. The house gets cleaned Saturday morning specifically, because I'd already worked out that early in the day was the most efficient time to do it. And nobody had to think about it again after that. In my head, I had solved the problem. I had already gone through trial and error, so why couldn't everyone just follow that plan that I'd already created for us?
Here's what that looked like from the rest of the family's perspective. After a week of emotional exhaustion, overstimulation, and not enough sleep, the kids and I would wake up on a Saturday needing to slow down and recover. Instead, we could see Ryan's visible disappointment and frustration that we weren't sticking to his schedule. There were other evenings when he wanted me to walk the dogs or tackle one of the chores on the list, when what I really needed was to rest. After a while, his schedule started to feel like a demand I just couldn't meet. Even our scheduled date nights sometimes fell on the very night when what I needed most was to be left alone so I could recharge. I would try to hint or gently suggest things that would meet my emotional needs. But because they weren't part of the schedule, Ryan often missed those bids. For example, I might say, This feels like a good morning to sleep in," or "I'd like to finish up that show I was into." My brain was thinking maybe he could do this together with me, but Ryan wouldn't naturally make that connection. The comment would simply come and go because it wasn't part of the plan. After enough moments like that, you eventually stop mentioning things. I learned that if I wanted something, I had to schedule my own needs and wants into Ryan's calendar well in advance. That was incredibly exhausting, especially for my ADHD brain, where planning everything ahead doesn't come naturally.
I had to learn, and it genuinely took years, is that when a plan changes, I need to mourn the loss of that plan for a minute before I can consider a new one. That's just how my brain works. But I've also learned to actually see the silver lining once I get there and to build in room for spontaneity on purpose instead of scheduling every hour of every day. The cleaning still mostly happens Saturday morning because that part works, but it's not law anymore.
And that shift signaled to me that Ryan knows it isn't the schedule being the priority, but it's me being the priority. That's the whole thing. I don't need him to abandon structure. I need the structure to bend for me sometimes.
If you're the one who needs the plan, keep the plan, just leave gaps in it on purpose. Your partner's spontaneous bids for connection are not a threat to your system. They're an opportunity to use it well. Speaking of nervous systems needing to rest, this next one connects directly to that, and it's actually why we built our shutdown recovery script. It's a free guide for exactly what to say to each other when one of you gets overwhelmed, so you're not improvising in the middle of it. Grab it using the link in the description. This next one is the most personal thing in this video, and I'm not proud of parts of it, but it's real, and I think it needs to be said. When things get heated, my nervous system heats up fast, faster than I can always catch in the moment. And I've gotten to a point more than once, mostly with our kids, in the middle of a meltdown where I felt like I was going to pop. And I've thrown things at walls, not at people, but at walls. And that's just not something I see lightly on camera. What I've learned, though, is that the second I feel myself getting close to that edge, the right move is to leave. Go for a walk, get out of the house, cool down before I do or say something I'm going to regret. Me, that's not avoidance, that's damage control.
And here's the thing, I actually agree with him leaving. I would rather he walk out the door than stay and lose control. The last thing either of us need is more dysregulation in the house. But agreeing with the logic doesn't make it easy. I'm the one left standing there afterwards, sometimes literally picking up the pieces with whatever just happened with a child of ours by myself while he's out cooling down. It is still hard to be the one who stays behind.
I think this is where a lot of people would assume I'm just avoiding conflict. And for some situations, sure, leaving a conversation to dodge saying something hurtful is genuinely a healthy instinct. Plenty of relationship advice says the same thing. But what I was actually dealing with wasn't just wanting to avoid an uncomfortable conversation. It was my nervous system getting so overloaded that I was putting holes in walls. Leaving the room in that moment wasn't enough on its own because the real problem wasn't what led up to the point in the first place. So with the kids, I've learned to set a rule ahead of time, in a lot of cases, like a consequence for not getting up for school, and let the rule do the work instead of my emotions doing it. I don't need to get upset in that moment. The consequence just runs, it keeps my hand away from a wall, and it keeps Lori's trust in me intact.
Because that's really what was at stake for me. Not whether he loved the kids or me. I never doubted that. It was whether I could trust him to stay regulated. And watching him manage his emotions, staying calm, and coming back to speak of the issues later, that builds the structure. Instead of just hoping he'd stay calm in the moment, his initiative to stay regulated is what rebuilt the trust.
If leaving a room is how you protect the people around you from your worst moment, that instinct isn't the problem. Just make sure that your partner knows the plan ahead of time so it reads as protection instead of abandonment.
Last one. Then this is the one that made me feel small more times than I can count, even when I know he never meant it that way.
I like being correct. I'll be honest about that. There's a version of this where Lori says, I think we left around 7, and some part of me genuinely believes I'm being helpful by saying it was actually 7:18. In my head, accuracy is a form of respect for the conversation. I've recently learned, though, that there's actually a word for this. Pedantry, prioritizing technical correctness over the point someone was actually trying to make. It's not usually malicious, but I understand now that it doesn't land as being helpful.
It lands as, why are you correcting me? It feels like nitpicking, and after enough of it, it starts to feel like contempt, even when I know that's not what he intends. I'm not trying to file an accurate police report when I tell a story. I'm trying to make a point or share a feeling. Getting stopped or corrected for the exact minute doesn't help either of those things happen.
What I've had to practice is asking myself a question before I open my mouth. Is being correct right now going to help the conversation, or is it just me trying to be correct? Most of the time, it's the second one. The time was never the point. Lori's story was the point.
And when he catches himself now and lets the 7:18 go, that tiny restraint means more than he probably realizes.
If you're the one who corrects the small stuff because it feels honest, and ask yourself whether the correction actually serves the conversation or just your own comfort with precision. Most of the time, you can let the small details go and keep the point intact. Before we wrap up, here's what we want to know from you. Of these 5, which one did you recognize in your own relationship, either as one living it or the one on the receiving end?
Drop it in the comments below. We read every one, and honestly, seeing which one of these resonates most with people tells us a lot about what to cover next.
And one last thing before we point you to what to watch next. If any part of this video felt familiar, but you're still not sure exactly where the friction in your own relationship is coming from, we built a free quiz for that. It's our relationship friction quiz, and in a couple minutes, it helps you pinpoint the specific pattern causing tension in your relationship, then points you to a free customized guide for that exact thing. It works for any couple, neurodivergent or not. You'll find the link in the description below. Now that you know some of the things autistic partners think are completely normal, you might be wondering how you'd actually spot autism in your own relationship in the first place, especially if it was never formally diagnosed. That's exactly what we walked through in this video right here on the hidden signs of autism in your marriage, and it pairs really well with everything you just learned. So go watch that one next.
Thanks for watching. And remember, even neurodivergent couples can make relationships work.